Okay, so next I want to ask you about this. So, David Pakman had put out a video about Medicare for All, basically saying, I support Medicare for All, but it's just too hard to get, and so we should really just go for a sort of public option type of thing. And pretty much really quickly after that video, you seem to have sent out a tweet thread that was responding to that. Was that tweet thread responding to that? And just give me your thoughts on that video as a whole.
Yes, it was.
Okay.
It was. I was, and David Pakman's my friend, but I was super triggered by that. Super triggered by that. Because that commentary is actively hurtful. It's not just like, oh, it's whatever, it's a middle ground, it is what it is, it's just a disagreement that I have with him. No, 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 no. That's unwittingly undermining this very important movement at this very important time in history. And the point that I was making is, dude, you could go out there and say in 1959, you could go, let's say Twitter existed in 1959. You go out there on Twitter and you say, listen, all these people are out here trying to end segregation? We've had segregation ever since the fall of slavery. It's a hardcore, ironclad institution. Let's get serious. It's not going anywhere. So what we really need to do is go through a piece. Now, I support ending segregation. Don't get me wrong. I support ending it. But if we really want to be serious about this, it's not going to get through Congress. It's not going to get through. So what we need to do is maybe like a piecemeal approach. Maybe we just end segregation in name while still effectively having the segregated schools for a little bit. And maybe we have a plan where over the course of 50 years, we slowly integrate it. But obviously we can't do it all at once because it's not realistic. If somebody said that back then, I mean, they're making a critique of the system that they think is true. Hey, man, we've had this thing for so long. It's not just going away. We can't just attack it all at once. I mean, that's crazy. But it's also just, that's insane because you need to take moral stands at a time when it's necessary. And what we need is, and this is why it's so important and why I think he was dead wrong for doing that segment, what we need is a full court press, all systems go, ruthless offense. And by the way, there is a way we could win. There was a time when we didn't have segregation and we got rid of segregation. We had the Voting Rights Act. We got the Civil Rights Act. We got women the right to vote. We ended prohibition. There's a lot of gains that we've made, and the way that we did it was not by gaslighting everybody and saying, oh, this is going to be really hard, so maybe we should approach it in a more pragmatic way. No, the way we did it was by riling everybody up and getting everybody to the cause and getting everybody to fight about it. So, this is why in the tweet storm, I gave specific directions as to how we get Medicare for All. It starts with getting an ally in the White House who we know we can rely on, who's not a fair weather friend, who's not 50-50 on it, who doesn't backpedal off of it. We get somebody in there who's like, no, I'm for Medicare for All, and that's the end of the conversation, and I'm going to make you be for it too, and we're going to get it implemented. How you like them apples? That's who we need in the White House. That's Bernie Sanders. That's not Elizabeth Warren. That's Bernie Sanders. So if Bernie Sanders is in the White House, then what? Bernie Sanders goes and gives a national address on TV, and he says, from the Oval Office, my friends, we are faced with an obstructionist Congress that's bought off by the for-profit health insurance companies and by Big Pharma. We're going to fight that, and we're going to end that. What I need is everybody to go march on Washington now. I want to see millions of people in Washington. I want to see, camps set up, tents set up. I want people to park there and say, we are not leaving until we get Medicare for All implemented, until Congress passes, the House of Representatives passes Medicare for All, the Senate passes Medicare for All, and I sign the Medicare for All bill. And I, as president, am co-signing you to take names of everybody who's against Medicare for All, write it down in stone, and we're going to primary them in the next election, and we're going to win. So we're going to do a general strike. We're going to march on Washington. We're going to primary everybody who's against Medicare for All, and we're going to win. And you know what happens then, Sahil? Same thing that happened in history previously with these big battles. If you keep fighting, you make them bend to your will, and you can absolutely win. You know how you definitely don't win? By going out there and gaslighting everybody and saying, well, let's be realistic about it. It's obviously not going to pass Congress. It's obviously not going to pass the Senate. So if we're going to do anything, maybe you take a step towards public option. Now, I'm not saying I'm not for Medicare for All. I am. But forget your but. Get rid of the but. Either you're in for the fight or you're not in for the fight. Okay? And it's going to be hard. It's going to be tough. Who cares? Who cares? It was also tough to fight back against the Depression and get the New Deal implemented. It was also tough to get women the right to vote. It was also tough to end segregation. All these fights were tough. That doesn't mean you give up on it. It means you fight harder. It's all the reason to get more involved and fight harder. And the light at the end of the tunnel is a Medicare for All system where everybody's covered. So I massively disagree with that. And, you know, it actually reminded me of that old Martin Luther King Jr. quote where he basically said something, I'm paraphrasing here, but he said something like, beware of the moderate, because it's the tranquilizing drug of gradualism that, that can really make it so we don't get progress. And Martin Luther King said, I would rather have an enemy who's open about the fact that he's an enemy than have, the well-meaning moderate who take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. Because the well-meaning moderate guarantees we don't get it implemented. Whereas at least with our enemies, they're up front. We know they're enemies, and so we could go at them and we can defeat them.
So you think David Pakman is the white moderate in this scenario?
In this scenario, with that commentary on Medicare for All, he's absolutely mirroring exactly what MLK was talking about in that quote, except with MLK, he was referencing racial issues. In this instance with David Pakman, it's about Medicare for All. It's about healthcare.
Do you think David has been taking a bit of a centrist turn?
I don't know if he's taking a centrist turn as much as it's just these are his politics. They've been his politics all along. And it's just coming out more now because the stories that he's reporting on happen to be stories where, it shows, whether it be Bolivia or whether it be other issues.
Okay. And I think he recently had said that he's undecided between... I don't know if he's saying he's undecided between Warren and Bernie, or if he's just not revealing who he's going to vote for. But, what are your thoughts on that in general?
Let me put it this way. If you're either a democratic socialist or a social democrat, as I am, I'm a social democrat. If you're for either one of those political ideologies, those philosophies, there's no question here. It's Bernie Sanders. To waffle between Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren means you're struggling between the identity of, am I for social democracy or am I for a kinder, gentler, more liberal, regulated version of capitalism? That's the split. And if he's saying I don't know between those two, then the implication is I don't know if I'm a social democrat or if I just want to improve capitalism but keep coloring within the lines type situation. Whereas, again, with Bernie, he believes in social democracy. He advocates for social democracy, even though he calls himself a democratic socialist. And his position is, no, certain things need to be out of the market. They shouldn't be in the market. Whereas Elizabeth Warren's position is more along the lines of markets work, but we have to tweak them. So if he's undecided between those two, then he doesn't know whether he's a social democrat or if he's, more of a liberal capitalist.
So another thing I wanted to ask you about, this is interesting. So it's another one of your former friends taking a shot at you, a guy by the name of Sargon of Akkad. He just made a video recently about you. Did you see that video?
I didn't see that video, and I'm not going to see that video. And for me, sometimes I'm a little too kind and I give people too many chances. And with him, let's just say he wore out his welcome quite a long time ago, to the point where at a certain point, I believe the last straw for me on him was the video about, AOC, and he was basically like smearing AOC relentlessly. And that was when I was like, oh, okay, I'm done. I was wrong. I judged this guy wrong from the beginning. He's not what I thought he was, because he told me to my face repeatedly. Well, not to my face, but, in a call where we were broadcasting for everybody. He was like, oh, I totally support Justice Democrats. I totally support what you're doing here. I totally support, reforming the Democratic Party and getting the corporate money out and making the party a social democratic party. I'm totally on board with that. Absolutely. And then to do a takedown video of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, where, in my view, he was just flat out strawmanning many of her positions. I mean, it was inexcusable. And so I had to reckon with the fact that I misjudged him from the beginning. And I really thought I honestly believed that he was like, and people are going to say this is naive, but again, you have to take it in context of the time when it was happening. This is before the zillion Sargon videos that have come out in the past 3 years or whatever it's been. But I thought he was a well-meaning lefty who was simply fed up with the social justice warrior nonsense. And so given that context, I was like, oh, he's not too bad. Because he would always make concessions to me and say, oh, I support the NHS. I support universal health care. Like, he would always say stuff like, I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So this guy's not too bad. But then over time, yeah, that's not what he was. Now he's just pretty conservative. I mean, it is what it is. And I don't know if he's repping that label yet, but he should. So, no, I didn't see that criticism, and I'm not going to see that criticism because basically I stopped taking stuff he said to heart a long time ago. There was a time where if he criticized me, I would actually feel it and be slightly triggered, but I stopped, really caring about his criticisms of me a long time ago because bottom line is we just have such a massive ideological difference that it really functionally is no different from like a Fox News host criticizing me or something, which I don't care about at all. The reason I got triggered by the Destiny thing is because I still think there's some good in Destiny. So that's why his criticism, like, I kind of took to heart a little more. Whereas with Sargon, it's like written off. Gonski, get out of here.